Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this ongoing series of topics of importance for our campus community as we collectively face our changed environments. On Monday, I was joined by two members of our counseling team at Hazen, and we discussed the crucial topic of mental health. If you happen to miss that conversation, the video is posted on the college's YouTube channel. Today, we will discuss perhaps the biggest change our campus has experienced as a result of coronavirus, the transition to remote learning. I'm joined by two outstanding members of our faculty. Dr. Mehruz Kamal is an associate professor of computing sciences. Her main research area dovetails perfectly with what we're going to discuss today, how information technology can bring about social and economic development of a community. She's also active on Twitter. You can follow her at Mehruz@K. Dr. John Daly is an associate professor of history who specializes in American Civil War and American religious history. He has experience teaching classes online, and I've been told his online classes are terrific. I'm eager to learn more. I also want to tell you a little bit more about each of them. John has been with the campus for 19 years, and like me, he really enjoys what he calls the circus arts. So although I'm good at being on a unicycle, apparently he's good at juggling, and there's YouTube evidence of this, which we should all look at later. And Dr. Kamal has been with the college for 11 years and admits that she really loves Archie comics. And she, in fact, at this point in time, she puts one under her pillow to keep the stress away at night. So those are great fun facts for us to know about the people who are joining us today. So thank you so much for joining us. I have a few questions for you. From an online standpoint, what are some of the best practices that you've discovered?
So two best practices that I'd like to share with my fellow instructors is I've come to realize that we're teaching through the screen and not to the screen. So what that means is the technology isn't really the focus. The focus is still on us as instructors and then on the students on the other side. And so when I'm recording my lectures, I try to integrate my personality. So I try to show my passion. I try to still show that enthusiasm that I would typically do with my students in the classroom. So I visualize myself being in the classroom. I've actually received feedback from some of the students after viewing my recorded lectures, and they tell me that when they're viewing them, it actually makes them feel that they're back in Edwards Hall or in Holmes Hall or in some of the other classrooms that we have around campus. So I think that's something that's been working really wonderfully. The other best practice I'd like to share with my fellow instructors is that try to use asynchronous methods as much as possible. Because during these times, we all know that our students are home and many of them may be sharing just the one computer. They have parents that are working from home that are using that computer. They may have multiple siblings that are also trying to use that same computer. So it makes it difficult for them to actually log on during the real-time synchronous classes. And so I think giving them an option to do it asynchronously, getting access to the content as and when it's convenient for them, that's something that I would suggest.
Thank you. And Dr. Daly?
I would reiterate what Dr. Kamal said. That's excellent advice. I would say something else that I'm experiencing in teaching right now that lines up with what happens when I plan to teach online, which is, in some of the reasons Dr. Kamal said about how the students are taking the class, that you really do find yourself online available to the students a lot, that you almost have to constantly be online to teach an online class. If you let them text or email you, and this is online one-on-one, you don't want to fill all their email boxes with constant announcements, but you want to be online as much as possible in real time. For instance, I'm teaching a class with 125 students on it, and they're doing seeing asynchronous lectures at 125 different times. And one of the great things about asynchronous video lectures is they can pause me, they can rewind me, they can make my face big, they can make it small, they can make it not there at all. It's wonderful having this virtual robot professor, but when they have a question, it's a big advantage teaching online. They can stop and email you personally, and as much as you can answer those sorts of things in close to real time as possible. Of course, there's limitations that we have as well, but no, it's easier to give empathy than advice, and I can give you empathy. If you find yourself online a lot, know that that's what online teaching is like. When I've done dozens of planned online courses, you do that as well. So it's sort of normal for online teaching, let alone in a crisis.
Thank you. I think both of those pieces of advice are really helpful for our faculty as they're navigating this new experience. A lot of our students are learning for the first time online too. So I wonder if you could give some tips or suggestions for our students that will help ensure their success.
I have a few tips for our students. The first one being try to stay on top of your assignments, especially for your online classes that are giving out weekly assignments. So as soon as they're given out, try to review what the requirements are and plan accordingly in terms of when you want to get it done. Because if you're putting it off till much later, it's just going to pile up and become very overwhelming. So plan it out accordingly. The second tip I'd like to give our students is now that we're constantly connected, we have a higher likelihood of being on social media sites for prolonged periods of time. So you do want to limit your use of social media, especially when you have other assignments to work on. The third little tip I have for our students is that try to take frequent short breaks. The reason I say that is because now we're staring at our computer screens for longer periods of time, listening to online lectures, connecting with our instructors, and oftentimes our brain starts to become a little numb. So just take a little break, go get some fresh air or have a healthy snack. That helps us to then, when we come back, to reset and refocus and concentrate better. And then the fourth, and I think the most important one, is stay connected with your classmates and your instructors. Stay engaged. Just because you're taking an online class doesn't mean you're in isolation. So email your classmates, Skype or FaceTime your instructors, connect with them on the discussion boards in Blackboard. So please don't disengage. Stay connected with us and your classmates.
Thank you.
So I would add to that excellent advice. Something else that Dr. Kamal said in her first section as well is, as for professors, she said, imagine ourselves in our classrooms and doing the same things. That's important for students as well. And some of the habits of good learning in face-to-face classes have to come over into online. The challenge on online is all of the self-starting and independent work you have to do. That's the challenge for students. So know that's a challenge is one thing. And I can speak to this because I took an online course for credit a couple of years ago to get a certificate. And I was so intimidated looking at all the things I had to do, all the tasks I had to do. So as Dr. Kamal said, taking it piece by piece and taking it in little pieces, look at the overview so you know what's coming. But I was also intimidated. And then all the different little things I had to do and post this many discussions and post this many questions. But then I remembered what learning is about, which is the content, the knowledge, the fun. If you focus on the knowledge and the content, you'll end up asking 6 questions, sending 6 emails, posting to discussion boards, and you'll do the work by loving the knowledge that's going on. You've got to find a way to care about the knowledge. Then it won't be a bunch of tedious tasks. It'll be something you're engaged with.
That is great. Thank you very much. Now, we've transitioned to remote learning in the middle of a semester. This is in no way ideal. But what has pleasantly surprised you about this transition?
I think, first of all, we've transitioned over 1,700 courses from face-to-face to remote instruction. I think that in itself is an amazing accomplishment. And so what I've been really impressed with, and shout out to the technology support services people in this context, is the amazing capability of our IT infrastructure to absorb this sudden load, this sudden traffic. I know a lot of my fellow instructors are carrying out classes synchronously in real time, and many of us are uploading tremendous amounts of content. We're downloading content, the same thing with our students. So I think the ability of our infrastructure to scale up and to absorb this tremendous traffic and load has been wonderful to see.
Great, thank you.
So I want to be careful with this one because I don't want to say it's an enormous surprise, but I have been pleasantly surprised in many ways. But before this started up in the week we were preparing, I was thinking, oh, here come all the questions from students, all the complaints from students, all the glitches. And instead, what has happened is my students, even in a 125 person class, have been incredibly helpful and have helped me teach online, but also something amazing, which is they're concerned about us and they're expressing concern and care for their professors. They care about their professors. And in some ways, the online format has helped me also express that I'm care and concerned about them. It probably wouldn't happen face to face. It would be more awkward, but students are comfortable with texting and emailing. So it's really been insightful and heartwarming how much concern and care and help to me they've given personally. And that's allowed me to express that to them. And then also help me, as I probably in the next one will say, help me creatively build a course as well.
I think that's wonderful, the experiences that we're having with our students. And I can tell you that I've had the opportunity to read through a number of the nominations for the Presidential Teaching Excellence Award. We have one of our Excellence Award winners here with us today with Dr. Kamal. And I can tell you the students absolutely appreciate the work that you as individuals are doing, but collectively, the entire Brockport faculty are working so hard to ensure they have a successful academic opportunity. And the students are commenting on that over and over again. So my final question for you is whether you can share an example of how you've used creativity during this time of transitioning.
So I think my answer to this next question goes back to what we were just talking about. I think the creative component for me comes from being open to suggestions from my students and having them be involved in co-constructing our course for the remainder of the semester. As a specific example, in my 400 level project management course, the students suggested using a specific tool that's typically used in a different context. It's a tool that's used in the video gaming community, and now we have adapted that tool to apply it to our educational objectives in our project management course. So the students are using that tool effectively because they already know it, they've used it, they're familiar with it. And so I think the creative component comes from leveraging what they are familiar with to now applying it to our course objectives. So being open to what students already know and applying it to our course has been the creative component for me.
Excellent. I really love to hear how the transition is working. Dr. Daly.
I would say the same thing, but an example from my small upper level research class on the Civil War, where the students and the professor together did some creativity. I think when I think about the research, I think about them going to the library, which they're not doing. And I think about the library, every time we go into the library, we see those anatomy skeletons and those anatomy models that we can't handle and pass back and forth. And I know that people working in those classes have found virtual models. And in my class on the Civil War, the students and I have created a virtual research archive that's growing all the time together. I'm finding things to post to it, they're finding things to post to it, and students are doing research projects more about material culture and physical things. So I have a student looking at hair jewelry and how they made hair, even hair from soldiers' hair. And then all these things have material culture, have virtual photographs and virtual documents. So those become the primary research documents, like virtual anatomy documents. And we're building this wonderful archive. Someone else is looking at all the beards. Why did they wear all those beards, and all the photographs they can use from the Civil War. So photographs, technical drawings, there's a whole wealth of virtual material out there that we can be creative with that we may not have known was out there. And now I'm going to take that into my traditional face-to-face class. Next time I teach this class face-to-face, I'll use the virtual archive that we built of research material, and we created together, sort of joint creativity, as Dr. Kamal was mentioning.
This has been so helpful. And as you may have heard in the background, I had an email that flung in just at that moment, which is a reminder to us how many different things are happening during our online opportunities and how distracting that can possibly be for our students. So let's hope that they are really engaged in the process of learning through our remote opportunities now. I want to thank both of you for being part of this conversation today. And for the audience, if you found this conversation useful, I hope you have. And if you have had ideas for future conversations, please email me at president@brockport.edu. Thank you so much for being here today. Thanks. Bye now.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.